Hello, Unity developers. Today we're going to be showing off, well, not any Unity features, just some C# stuff. Getters and setters. What are they? How I like to use them. And yeah, so I'm going to just jump right in. I'm going to show an example of the syntax with an inventory. Here we go. So our inventory is going to have, let's say, an int that's tracking how many let's call it our wallet. It's gonna I'll name it a current gold. I'll set that equal to 0. And if we wanted to show it in inspector, we would just serialize field. Now, right now, this is a private variable. It doesn't save, but by default they're private, meaning other scripts can't access this. So if I go into, for instance, uh, let's do my character controller. Yeah, if I open up my character controller, you don't need to worry about all of this. Um, let's just do it in update. So if I tried to do like inventory, I'm gonna make a new inventory. It's gonna be like my inventory, and if I just try using IntelliSense to access that current gold value, it's not gonna let me. So if I do cur gold, it's it says inaccessible due to its protection level, and that's because it's private. If we were to make it public, we'd be able to access this. So yeah, now we could set this to whatever we want. We could just get it for whatever we need to uh, have it like drive different functionalities. But this is kind of a bad thing to do for everything. People always say to go private by default, because now if it was public, any random programmer could go in some arbitrary script and accidentally set that current gold value to something. And tracking down those kinds of bugs are very difficult to do. If not, they just waste a lot of time. So it's better to not have to do that at all. Basically, what a getter does is, instead of saying it's public, we're gonna keep it private basically, but we're gonna say we're gonna make a function called like set gold, and that's gonna take an int amount, and all it's gonna do is gonna say cur gold equals amount. And if we did my inventory dot set gold, gotta make it public. Yeah. If we set gold, we could tell it to set our gold to whatever value we need it to. Alternatively, if we needed to get the value, public int get gold, it would return their current gold. So I could then do my inventory dot get gold, and that would give me my int. Well, I have to put parentheses. But the problem is, my inventory is null. I could fix this with a get component. Let me just do that right now, so that's out of the way. Okay. But so these are, you can think of them as getters and setters, but there's a better way to do this in syntax. So instead, I'm gonna put some people do lowercase. I like to do underscores, and I'm gonna make another function. Not a function. It's called a property. So it's like between a variable and a function. I'm gonna name it int. It's gonna be int, and I'm just gonna say cur gold. So this is gonna have the name that it had before it. So whenever I was previously accessing cur gold, now it's just gonna access it normally. I'm actually gonna get rid of these because we don't need these anymore. Um, and so the syntax for an actual C# getter and setter goes like this. You start your curly brackets, and you say get, and then you start another set of curly brackets, and then, well, there. I mean, and IntelliSense has me. So this right here is a getter and a setter. This is the getter. It does this. It returns current gold, and that's doing the exact same thing as public int get gold, and all that does is return gold. It's the same thing, but set is a little bit different. So set, you can basically think of it as a public void. Give this a different name. Set. Yeah, and then it's just gonna have like a variable var. Um, it might be any type, but for us it's an int, and it's going to be called value, and so that's what this is. So the way you basically call this set function is if I were to do like inside update, if I was to do current gold equals something, this will be passed in to this value for our function, and yeah, and it'll be called every single time we use the assignment operator basically. Now we don't need this, so that's all a getter and setter does. But if I tried to do the get and set, I would do my inventory, and it's still not there current gold, and that's because the getter and setter itself is private. If I made it public, we still have that problem now. So you could get it and you can set it from outside scripts. Alternatively, what you can do is you can have the get stay public, but then you could specify that you only want to be able to set this from within the function. So now I could say inventory.currentGold. We got that. But if I tried to set it equal to something, we're going to get this. The property indexer inventory.currentGold cannot be used in the current context because its set accessor is inaccessible, because we made it private. So yeah, that's a pretty nice way to consolidate a lot of your problems into one area right here. Now you would then have the setter actually being here. You'd have some kind of function like public void add money, and it takes a gold to add. I'm gonna give this a better name, gold number, and it just does cur gold plus gold number or gold amount. I'm gonna change that to gold amount. And so we can actually call this add money, and it doesn't give us any problems because add money itself is public. This is a very simple getter and setter, but I like to use them for a little bit more complicated things. I'm gonna show off specifically my camera. All right, so this is my camera. I have a lot of stuff here. Don't be intimidated by it. This is relatively simple stuff, but I should show off specifically how the camera works. So here's my camera right here in the scene. The pivot is actually down here. So what I have selected isn't actually the camera. It's an empty object called the cam target. This is the actual camera. Now I have it set up this way. The camera controller has a camera pivot, which is this cam target. And the reason for that is this is a third-person camera. I don't want to have to move it and then rotate it and then move it and then rotate it whenever I want it to like smoothly follow around the character. Instead, I just want to be able to take this cam targets, this empty objects transform, and just rotate it around. Let me set this to global. Yeah, instead I just want to be able to move this around and do stuff. It makes things a lot easier for third-person cameras. So inside of here, I have these shorthand getters. I call them shorthand getters. I'm using them kind of like macros because C# doesn't have macros. Now these aren't actually macros because they do take up actual memory inside the object. You can delete these later on, but I use them to make it more readable. So for instance, our zoom, here it is. Yeah, I have this getter and setter called zoom. Now, if you get it, it will return this. It will return this, and this is basically just it's the distance between the camera and the camera target object, and that's very useful because instead of saying this, I can just say current zoom. So down here, I have this zoom lerp coroutine. Coroutines, basically, what a coroutine is, you can think of it as it's like its own update loop. whenever I get down to this yield return, it'll just wait until the next frame and do it all. If you don't know what coroutines are, that was my short explanation. But right here, this is what I'm talking about. This current zoom getter, it's much nicer to be able to read this and have it say, while the current zoom doesn't equal the input zoom. By the way, this is also a getter. While the current zoom doesn't equal the input zoom, rather than this. Those are the exact same thing. But I think we can all agree this is much, much nicer to read. I also like to use setters in very interesting ways as sort of a value changed thing. I'm going to show off my example with zoom because I'm already showing this off. So you can set the current zoom directly. What that'll actually do is it'll just call this function. So sometimes setting the current zoom and setting this, it's like polymorphism sort of. I can basically say, oh, I want to set my current zoom to this, and instead it's just going to call that function. That's pretty nice. I don't think I actually do it anywhere in the code, but pretty nice. But the more complicated, the more actual useful case of a setter, I think, is in here. Yes. So I have a bunch of logic inside this setter, and essentially what this does is it'll take this value, it'll clamp it between our min and max zoom. So you don't want to zoom in like more than we want you to, or out more than we want you to, and it will basically check if this coroutine is running. If it is, it'll check if it's not running. My bad. If it's not running, it's going to start this coroutine. So it's going to start that like update loop, the zoom update loop, and it's going to set our input zoom. So whenever our input zoom is actually a new value, it's going to set this and start this coroutine. So we don't have to manually start this coroutine. We don't have to set our input zoom and then manually start the coroutine every single time. We just have to set our input zoom, and it will automatically start this coroutine all the way down here. If that last explanation was a little bit too complicated, this one will be a little bit better. So this is a very simple example. This is a health component. I have it called character status because I'm going to have it contain a lot of other things in it, such as status effects and endurance and maybe mana or whatever. But right now, the only thing that's inside of here is the health logic. So I've got this float for the current health, and then I have this setter for current health. Now, right above it, then I have this event called health changed. Now, I think you might see where this is going. If you have like a UI system and maybe a sound system and just a whole bunch of things that need to keep their values updated to reflect the player's health, it could be very annoying to have to pull your value every update or do some sort of complicated thing where inside your character status you're telling all of your other systems to update. Instead, I have this public event that will be invoked whenever you set it. So whenever you call the set this, so basically whenever this variable changes or mutates, the health changed event fires off, and then other things inside my my game, for instance, my UI, my sound systems, they'll react to that event, and they'll do their things that they have bound to that event. And yeah, it's nice. Anytime I set current health. Anyways, that was getters and setters. Hopefully you can find a way to make them work great for you. Bye.